Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well today. So for today's video, we are going to be stepping back in time a little bit because I have a project I want to work on that is related to a vintage piece that I recently added to my vintage dress collection. So for my birthday this year, back in the summer, my sister bought me this beautiful 1930s vintage dress. I love this so much. This particular dress had been on my wish list for quite a long time, and it is from the shop Dear Golden Vintage. They have the most beautiful vintage pieces. This is a 1930s blue lace dress, and as you can see, there is no slip or lining included with this. So I want to make a slip to go along with this dress today. So this would also work if you want to make a slip dress, the same type of idea. So let me show you the pattern and the fabric. I was so excited as soon as I opened the package containing this dress because I realized I actually had an almost perfect match. It actually looks a little bit more distant on camera than it does in real life in my fabric stash. This is a blue silk crepe that I bought when I was at the Dallas Fabric District a couple of months ago. So I'm so excited that I already had this in my fabric collection ready to go, and it's just a beautiful, really fluid fabric. And then I also have a vintage pattern to work with today. So I got this from Lady Marlowe Patterns, and they have a wonderful selection of vintage reproduction patterns. This one in particular is a 1930s slip. It has a couple of options. I will be going for this one right here because I think this will suit the neckline of the original dress really well. And then I actually have a vintage 1930s slip in my vintage collection, so I thought I would show you this just for comparison purposes. This does not fit me, sadly. So I should probably give this to one of my sisters, but this is a 1930s slip. It's a single piece in the front, but then it kicks out to a little flounce at the hem. And then the back has a seam down the center. It's very basic. And then the way this fastens, it just has snaps along the side. So that's pretty simple. I'm not sure how the closures work on the pattern that I got, so we'll check that out and see. But it's very basic, very simple. So we'll go for something along the same lines, and I'm excited to see how it turns out. So the first thing I want to do is just cut the slip out, and I think this will be a fairly quick project, fingers crossed. So we'll just see how far I can get on it this morning, and I will keep you updated along the way. But first things first, let's get it cut out. I'm just having a quick look through the pattern instructions before I start cutting out my pieces. And just a few things to note. These are direct reproductions of vintage patterns, so sometimes there are some things that are a little bit different from the way you might see things indicated on modern patterns. So particularly for this pattern, you have this one bodice piece, but for this view that I'm making, they just have little dotted lines that indicate where you would cut on the pattern to create this particular bodice. And then you can see there's also a feature for this view where you would have dotted lines on the lower part of the slip to create that dropped waistline. So just some variety on how you can put this together. And then on the actual pattern piece, this is how that is indicated here. So you can see they've transferred those same markings. And then one other thing, all of the pieces for this slip are cut on the bias. That's kind of the quintessential feature of 1930s clothing, in my mind at least. So that means that we'll be cutting on the diagonal instead of on the straight grain of the fabric, and it will give it that more fluid look. So I'm going to get everything cut out. There are only 4 pattern pieces, so it should be pretty quick. So I just finished cutting everything out, and if I'm being honest, slippery silk fabrics like this and fabrics cut on the bias are like my arch nemesis when it comes to sewing. So I'm excited for the opportunity to make something very simple and hopefully kind of refine my skills in that area a little bit. So I really took my time with making sure that the grain was aligned and cutting out carefully. And I have all of my pieces cut out now and ready to go. So here is the back piece of the slip, just a basic long piece with this little V shape at the top. And then this is the lower front, so you can see it kind of has this point at the top, and then the bias cut skirt for the bottom of the slip. Then here is the top of the slip, and this will be gathered on the under bust line here. And then we also have the 2 strap pieces. And then while I was at it, I went ahead and made some bias tape, because as I was reading through the pattern instructions, they use bias tape to finish the neckline. And I'm also going to use this to hide a few raw edges on the inside. One thing that I always find interesting about these older patterns is that they're not designed for kind of the modern expectation of what an inside of a garment would look like. So they didn't have overlockers or sergers or anything like that back then. So like the slip that I showed you earlier, and I don't know if this was made by a home sewer or if this was purchased, but if you look at the inside, it's just finished with pinking shears. And I don't know if it'll focus because my camera really does not like to focus on this light color, but there's no kind of seam finishing other than that. So I will probably want to make mine a little bit more polished on the inside, just because that's how I prefer things. So I think I'm going to use French seams and bias tape, and we will see what happens. So the first thing I'm going to do to get started with this is just to run gathering stitches on the lower part of the bodice piece, and then I will gather those up, and then we'll be ready to sew the first 2 pieces together. Okay, so I've added my gathering stitches to the bodice piece, and now I can work for a minute with this lower front piece. So all the pattern has to do here is to fold this edge under a 1/2 inch. So that's where I'm going to start. I'm just going to do this how I think it should be done, and hopefully it will turn out correctly. One thing I'm going to do to hopefully give this a really clean point is just turn this top edge under slightly. Again, with these vintage patterns, the instructions can be quite minimal. And so sometimes I feel like it's a little bit of ad-libbing, which if you follow me, you know that's kind of my cup of tea already, because I like to just kind of do what I want when I'm sewing. So we'll see how this works. I think this is going to help this to look a little bit cleaner though. So now when I fold the opposite side, you can see there's no raw edge there. So this will look really nice on the right side of the garment. Okay, then here on the outside, you can see we have this nice clean point. So now I'm ready to start assembling the front. So I'm going to pull my gathering threads to create a little bit of shape here in the bodice. And then I'm just going to overlap this piece over the top of this with a 1/2 inch overlap. Okay, so here is what it's looking like, and the pattern says just to top stitch this on. What I'm going to do though is baste this on first, and then here on the back where I have this raw edge, I'm going to apply some bias tape and top stitch that from the front to hopefully keep everything looking really clean. So I'm gonna go ahead and baste this on first, and then we will go from there. So that is now basted on. It's looking a little bit interesting just because this seam looks so thick here. So let's make this look a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and trim away some of this excess seam allowance here on the back. And then we're just going to cover this all up with bias tape. Okay, we're doing a bit of trial and error here because I did not love the way the bias looked on the back of this once I got it sewn on. It just seemed like it looked kind of odd. I don't know, something about it was not quite right. So I'm going to try again, and I'm going to try going ahead and top stitching really close to this edge here. And then when I go to the back, I'm going to try using my bias tape like a binding around the seam. So we'll see how that looks. Take two. Okay, so I'm very hopeful about this so far because the front is looking a lot better. I think the thing I wasn't liking was the multiple rows of stitching on the front of the slip. So I have that piece of bias tape that I just removed. And what I'm going to do is open this out and stitch all the way along, attaching this to the seam allowance. Then I can wrap this over and fold that and then top stitch so that everything is contained. My only concern here is that this will turn out to be a little too thick, but hopefully it will work, especially with all of the seam allowances trimmed and everything. So I'm gonna give it a shot. Okay, so that seam edge is now bound in the bias binding. I would say this is not my neatest work, but I'm happy with it overall, and I think it looks really nice from the outside. So we're gonna go with it. And now I'm ready to start assembling the slip. Current progress report. So I have the the top all assembled and the front and back sewn together with French seams. So now all I need are these straps, and then to finish off the top edge with bias binding, as well as do the hem. I am going to take a break, have some lunch, and I am working this afternoon, so I'm going to go to work, and then I will come back and finish up the straps and the top of the slip tonight. But making good progress. I think that if I had not had to take off the bias binding in the center seam there, this would have gone a lot faster. And I think if I were using my serger, it would also go a lot faster. So if I try this again, I may just use those modern conveniences and it'll be a little bit more of a speedy process. But I think it's looking pretty good. I'm happy with the shape of it and the way the bias fabric is hanging, which is something that I always struggle with. So I'm very pleased that that seems to be going well. So I will be back a little bit later today to finish this up.
There is no place I'd rather be than right here next to you. And I truly love to talk about your lovers, old and new. You never spare me details as you confide in me. I smile and give advice, but cannot tell you how I feel. How easy it would be to fall for you, but that of course is something I won't do. 'Cause we've agreed between you and me, we're nothing more than friends. How silly it would be to put this friendship to an end. How crazy that would be, yet here I am, falling in love again. Stupid I would be to still have faith, to never stop believing that one day, when time is right and stars align, our views would coincide. We'll see the world in color.
So I've made some significant progress. I have the straps attached, and then the top is finished off with bias binding on the inside that I've just sewn on the inside by hand, so that it just leaves these tiny little marks where the stitches are, so you really can't see it too much. So all I need to do now is to let this hang up overnight so that the bias can stretch out, because this is cut on the bias. That means that if I were to hem it now, it would be very uneven by the time I look at it in a couple of days. So I'm going to let it hang up and stretch and then hem it tomorrow, and this will be done. I am so pleased to have a project that is pretty much done in one day. It's always nice when that happens. So I will check in back with you guys tomorrow whenever I hem this, but for now I'm going to hang it up here with the dress and let it stretch out.
How easy it would be to fall for you, but that of course is something I won't do. easy that would be, yet here I am, falling in love again.
Okay, hey friends, so it is a few days later now and I have the slip on with the dress. I am not quite confident enough to be able to just show you this slip without the dress over it, but I am so happy with the way it turned out. I think it looks perfect together and you really can't tell much of a difference on the color. So I am just so excited to have this dress to be able to wear because I absolutely love it. It's just my dream vintage dress. So I think this slip turned out so well. So I'm super excited. I think I'm going to wear this to the first symphony concert of the year once the season starts. And I'm really looking forward to it. I think it was so fun to work on this project, and I feel like this slip pattern is probably early 1930s because there's some elements of it that make me think it's kind of transitioning out of that 1920s style, and I just love how it turned out. I'm really happy with it. I'm glad I took my time with the bias cut fabric because I think it paid off, and I'm really pleased with the final result. And yeah, I'm just so excited to be able to wear this dress now. So thank you guys for watching today's video. I feel like this will turn out to be a little bit more of a short one, but I hope you enjoyed it. And I'm so excited to get into some fall sewing projects very, very soon. I have a pile of fabric sitting over here. They're staring at me and it's ready to be worked on. So I'm so excited to share more very, very soon. If you're new to my channel and haven't yet subscribed, you can go ahead and do that by clicking the button down below. And I would really appreciate it, but I will talk to you in a new video very, very soon. Bye.
How stupid that would be, indeed, that's true. And still I'm waiting for you.